in Europe we didn't have Hakkou Ichiu. Hakkou Ichiu is a concept from 1850 gurai.
No, 1,000 years ago. They picked that word from 1850, 1900. But actually that word existed 1,000 years ago.
Really? But did Japan have such a wide view?
Actually picked up as a Japan-wide, philosophy after Meiji Restoration.
Right.
And Imperial prescription for education and Hakkou Ichiu is the same base Meiji Emperor adopted.
Okay, so it's an old concept. So if we look at Europe, I think what unites us in Europe is Christianity. Christianity is about love your neighbor, do the right thing, treat other people with respect. It's a guideline as to how we should live in order to get closer to God. It's about altruism, about turning the other cheek. It's about basically helping yourself and others to go to heaven by living in the right way. So this is something that inspires people to be better versions of themselves, and that Christianity in itself is something that is really, I think, well, a lot of people, for a lot of people, it takes a very important place. It decides how they live, who they support, and it inspires people, and it brings people together in churches, because these churches, they organize this whole spiritual life, and they become like, gatekeepers, and they reinforce the message, and they bring people together and reinforce that message every month, every week if they go to church, or before that it used to be on a daily basis. Now, so this kind of idea of altruism, for many people, when it came to colonialism, it was an idea to actually spread Christianity. And for them, that was a really good thing, because Christianity brought happiness, brought peace of mind. It helped people to get in contact with God, and what is better than that? So it was really an altruistic idea. So when we look at colonialism, if you look at it, like there a lot of churches, hospitals were built, infrastructure was built, economic development was realized during this colonialism. British Empire was called the Commonwealth because they truly believed that it would bring benefits to everybody who was a member of it. And a lot of people in the countries that were colonialized actually felt, especially after the colonialism was over, that a lot of the facilities, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the stability, educational institutes, infrastructure, etc., was actually at a higher level during colonialism than it was before. The start of colonialism, the start of building colonies, was usually part of let's take Indonesia, which I know best, but that was basically, we were on a trade mission. So the trade mission was basically to find goods that we could buy at a reasonable price and sell it at a higher price in our own countries. That was a mission, and once we established these trade relationships, we would settle and negotiate with these people. Unfortunately, some of these tradespeople, they were in possession of guns, they were in possession of a lot of money, so there was a asymmetry in the power balance between the locals and the wealthy traders. And actually, there was very little that would stop these traders to actually leverage their power against the local people. So what we saw is that, unfortunately, something that started as a normal relationship actually evolved into a asymmetric power balance, and that resulted in taking more and more power in these colonies. But at the other side of the spectrum, there were still all the priests that would go there. They would not take any money. They would go there because purely from the goodness of their heart, because they believed in Christianity. They believed in education. They believed in developing the infrastructure. They believed that we were bringing something good to these colonies. The other side of the story is, if we look at hundreds of years of colonialization, that we see that we have not been educating, we have not actually been truly listening to these countries. We became addicted to the benefits that these colonies would bring to our countries, and we became dependent upon them because it was necessary in order to sustain yourself. So,
By the way, Ed,
yes.
what is the relationship between Christianity and colonialism? I don't understand well.
Well,
And also relating, you can speak out geopolitics. Like American first is Western geopolitics, right? As you know, the country's national interest is the first. Is geopolitics the standard?
That's current day. Let's look at how colonialism started. Colonialism was supported from the idea that we were going to spread Christianity across the world. And Christianity in itself was something that the people believed in, so they supported the tradespeople. They brought their churches across the world, and they actually also established trade relationships. So there was nothing wrong about it. It was not with ill intentions. In retrospect, we could say, okay, you know what? Actually, this was terrible. We actually abused these countries. We robbed them blind. We took all kinds of things about it. But that was not why the majority of the Dutch people, the majority of the British people, the majority of the French people were colonializing, not because they were only bloodthirsty and selfish aim for getting money out of these colonies. That was not the objective.
Yeah, I wanted to know about how about the British colonialization for India, colonialization for Singapore. I wanted to know that, but actually they treated as those people, local people, as human beings. But basically they had the Christianity background. But how come they did treat like that?
What do you mean?
They didn't treat the local people as human beings.
No, those are exceptions to the rules. That's absolutely not true.
But India history, Singapore history, local people, they are not like a human being. That's the things.
No. It's basically, I refuse to.
I wrote several articles written by local people.
Want,
not British writing. Local people writing that those they do not be respected.
Sure. Anybody can write whatever they want, but the majority of the people believed in spreading Christianity, and that's what drove them to support it. The problem is that the whole plan actually turned out to be rather disadvantageous for the people who were colonialized, that there were people who were killed, that there were people who were actually, once they were in the position of power, that they abused that power and they wanted more and more and more, and people died. And we were developing the infrastructure in Indonesia to connect the north and the south of Java, building a road. it cost an enormous number of lives because of the pure disrespect of human lives, and just because people put prestige and their own benefits in terms of having good infrastructure to unload all the revenue from the land onto ships. So a lot of things went completely wrong. Now, you can ask yourself, was that because everybody had that idea? Everybody wanted to extort the colonial power, that they disrespected the people who lived there? I don't think that was the case, but
I've been to Asia Pacific more than 200 times, and I read a lot of materials over there. And the simply comparison, like British soldiers living, British civilian people's level of life compared with local people, and I can't check the money-wise, but tremendous gaps among those people, soldiers and British civilians. Living standards terribly high compared with local people. And I don't know why. This is Christianity, like kind of inequality gap. They accept inequality gap. Maybe yes, right?
Yeah.
But Japanese not. Japanese not like that. This is Hakkou Ichiu is based on like that.
My point is actually any society, any group, they need something that they believe in, that combines people, that drives them into something good. And whether it's Christianity or whether it's Hakkou Ichiu, the point is that our Christianity made people go to crusades in order to liberate the Holy Land. We went to a colonialized world, dominate people who did not invite us to stay there, and
No, Ed, I wanted to say crusade people.
No. I think it's about time that I can talk. So the problem is that Christianity and all these good beliefs actually were only part of the medal, and one side of the medal. The other side of the medal is that through colonialization we actually created a huge disadvantage for a lot of countries. If we look at all the developing countries in the world, they were all former colonies, and that is the result of colonialization. That is the result. That doesn't mean that everybody was of ill intent, but I think that we did not fully control and we did not fully take responsibility for what we were doing. So we had our own agenda, but the bigger agenda was the people who really pulled the strings. They used these kinds of altruistic ideas and bigger ideas to achieve goals that turned out to be very, very disadvantageous for other nations. And so when it comes to Hakkou Ichiu, when it comes to Christianity, sure, I believe that there is a lot of good in them, but we should also look at the facts. And what impact did this idea have in the final results for the people who were colonialized, the people who were invaded by Japan, by the people who were colonialized by the Dutch? I think it was not good. I think it was really not good. So we can look at history, we can look at all the great ideas behind it, but we have a responsibility. We have responsibility for that we let the traders get away with what they did. Japan has a responsibility to let the army do what they did. To completely absolve yourself and say, these are two different things. No, they are not. It is actually the Japanese people who allowed this to happen. And they might have had good ideas, but they have a responsibility. Just like we have a responsibility as Dutch people for what happened in the colonies. That's my point. And that's why everybody outside of Japan gets so uncomfortable when Japan is talking about history and their best intentions and whatever. It was not in the best interest of the people that they colonialized. Almost as many people died under the Japanese occupation as did under the German occupation. That is not in the best interest of those people. It might have been the military, but Japan as a country was an enabler of this to happen.
How do you think about overseas people colonization with inequality of local people?
Well, this is actually has nothing to do with colonialization. It was also the reality in Europe itself. There were big differences in wealth, just like in Japan. You had daimyos, you had farmers, you had craftsmen.
No. What I'm trying to say is What I'm trying to say is American military in Japan, okay, and their living environment exactly the same as American house, American living, American food, American price at American base, right? Exactly the same. Street is very wide, house is very big, and they are living is exactly the same as American living standard, right? This is the rule of American military. Japanese military is different. Japanese try to focus on local people, and they try to the equal environment with local army, navy. So it's completely different from the rest of the world. How do you think?
It's completely not true. I mean, if we look at Japan today, even today, and everywhere you go in the world, they are gathering together, living in their own places, going to their own restaurants, creating their own little world. It's just like the Americans. It's not different.
What do you mean?
I mean that Japanese, they get together, they import rice from overseas, they eat their own food, they go to their own restaurants, they hang out together while they are overseas. This is they create their own Japanese world, just like the Americans when they're overseas in Japan. They create their own world, because they're basically what the American government is doing. They're taking these boys and girls out of the country and put them in a foreign country, but nobody really asked for that. So they basically recreate their own world, and it's a base. It's a base. It's not like you're being sent overseas to become Japanese. No, they're there for a limited period of time to serve in the army, and they actually, I think they probably have an interest to keep them Japanese, American, because actually they are to fight for the Americans. So of course they keep them on base. Of course they keep them close at hand, because they want to make sure that they stay American and they still remember whose side they're on.
Okay, Japanese people try to coordinate with local people at the same level, okay, and not try to differentiate. Westerners try to keep their status.
What do you think? All those priests and school teachers and everything, you think that they lived wealthy lives? They had virtually zero income.
Except embassy.
Maybe embassy. And actually all the people who ruled, like we had governors in Indonesia, they made good money, they were wealthy, they all had servants, and they lived in a big house, etc. But that's not so much different from the situation at home. It was exactly the same in England and in the Netherlands and all those countries. There were people who were in influential positions, and they had servants. Only then they were French.
Especially after World War II, Japanese company tried to same life level in China. So they try to good condition for those people. But before World War II, Japanese people try to live with those people at the same level.